The telegram that would destroy a criminal empire and nearly cost Vera Hartley her life arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Saturday night in March 1927. She almost ignored it. Shipment delayed, stop alternate route confirmed, stop Phoenix protocol active, stop expect delivery Thursday 0200 stop. 28 years old, widowed, and responsible for a 7-year-old son, Vera Hartley had learned to mind her own business in Millbrook, Nebraska, population 823. She was the head telegraph operator at the town's Western Union office, a wood-paneled room that smelled of machine oil and old paper. For 3 years, she had processed thousands of messages, grain prices, family emergencies, business orders. This was different. The message was addressed to MW, General Delivery. No signature. No return information beyond a Chicago routing code. The phrasing was wrong, too formal for personal correspondence, too vague for legitimate business. And Phoenix Protocol sounded like nothing she had ever seen in agricultural commerce. She logged the message and placed it in the general delivery box. Then she sat in the silence and tried to convince herself it meant nothing. She lasted until Sunday morning. Ida Chen's restaurant occupied the ground floor of Millbrook's only boarding house. Ida had arrived in Nebraska in 1897, one of perhaps 20 Chinese immigrants in a 100-mile radius, and had outlasted prejudice and economic depressions through excellent cooking and strategic silence. Vera found her in the kitchen at 6 a.m. "You look like you haven't slept," Ida said. Vera told her about the telegram. Ida stopped stirring the pot of oatmeal and turned to face her. "My nephew works at the grain elevator. Night shift loading. 3 months ago, he told me something strange. Trucks arriving after midnight, 2 or 3 times a month. They're not picking up grain. They're dropping off crates. Small ones, heavy, marked as agricultural equipment. Hey folks, welcome to today's story. If you're someone who believes the truth should never stay hidden, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment below where you're watching from. Let's get into it. What kind of equipment? The kind that sloshes when you move it." Ida's expression was grim. He asked his supervisor about it. Week later, his shifts got cut in half. Prohibition had been federal law for 7 years. Every town had its bootleggers, but this sounded organized. In a town the size of Millbrook, only one man had enough power and capital, Judge Cornelius Bradford. He owned the grain cooperative, sat on every important board. When the judge spoke, the town listened. "Forget about this," Ida said quietly. "You have a son to think about." Marcus Webb appeared at the Western Union office at 4 p.m. Sunday, immaculate in a gray suit. He had arrived in town the previous September, representing a Chicago grain syndicate. Handsome, charming, unmarried. He had taken Vera to dinner twice. "Any messages for me?" he asked, smiling. "I'm expecting a telegram from my office." Vera's heart rate quickened. "MW Marcus Webb." "Nothing's come in," she lied. His smile remained fixed, but something shifted behind his eyes. "Are you certain?" "It would have arrived late last night. I logged everything. No messages addressed to you." He studied her for a long moment. Then the charm reasserted itself. "Must be delayed." "Thank you, Vera." After he left, Vera sat in the dim office, hands shaking. She had just lied to a man who might be running illegal alcohol through the town. A man who now knew she had information he needed. She retrieved the telegram from General Delivery and made a copy. She hid the original in the false bottom of her desk drawer. Over 3 days, Vera became an amateur detective. She pulled telegram logs and cross-referenced them with business records at the county clerk's office. The pattern emerged like a photograph developing. Telegrams arrived every 2 to 3 weeks. Different initials, all General Delivery. Judge Bradford made regular trips to Chicago. She confirmed this through telegrams his secretary sent arranging hotels. The coded messages always arrived within a day of his return. She checked grain shipment records at the railroad depot. Cars that should have weighed 30 tons according to manifests weighed 35 or 40 tons. Someone was shipping additional cargo hidden among agricultural freight. Someone was using her telegraph office to coordinate deliveries. Wednesday evening, Sheriff Raymond Cole appeared at her door. "Saw your light on late the last few nights," he said, projecting concerned paternalism. "Everything all right? Just catching up on paperwork." "Lot of paperwork for a telegraph office." He smiled without warmth. "This is a good town. Safe place to raise a boy. Tommy's doing well in school, I hear." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. "We like it here," Vera managed. "Good. You take care now." She understood with absolute clarity that she had been warned. They were watching her. Every telegram she sent would be logged and monitored. The telephone switchboard operator was married to one of Judge Bradford's foremen. She was trapped in a web of small-town connections. The only option was federal authorities. But how? Thursday morning. 36 hours until the 2 a.m. deadline mentioned in the telegram. Vera sent her son Tommy to school with a borrowed camera, inventing a story about a photography project. She told him to photograph the grain elevator from different angles. At noon, Marcus Webb entered the telegraph office. "I need to send a message," he said. "Charm gone." He dictated, "Delivery confirmed, stop, proceed as planned, stop, acknowledge receipt." Vera transcribed it and sent it through. She made a copy. "You seem nervous, Vera," he said. "Just tired. You should get more rest." He leaned across the counter. People make mistakes when they're tired. Dangerous mistakes. After he left, Vera vomited in the wastebasket behind her desk. That afternoon, she requested property deeds at the courthouse and photographed pages showing Judge Bradford's ownership of the grain elevator and partnerships with Chicago interests. At 4 p.m., Tommy returned with the camera. Vera developed the film in the makeshift darkroom in her bathroom. The images showed the loading docks clearly. One shot captured a partially broken crate revealing glass bottles packed in straw. She now had documentation. Telegram copies, property records, photographs. Evidence of a bootlegging operation moving illegal alcohol from Chicago through rural Nebraska using grain shipments as cover. The question remained, how to get it to federal authorities. Ida provided the answer over dinner. The railroad depot has an old freight telegraph line that runs parallel to the passenger line. Decommissioned 2 years ago, but the physical connection might still work. If you could access their equipment after hours, you could send a message that wouldn't go through Western Union Central Office. The depot is locked at night. "I know where the spare key is," Ida said. "The night manager is my second cousin. He's in Omaha this week." Vera looked at her son, oblivious to the adult's conversation. "If this goes wrong..." "Then you tried," Ida interrupted. "That's more than most people can say." Thursday night. At 9 p.m., Vera put Tommy to bed. She had packed a suitcase with clothes and documents. If this went wrong, they would need to run. At 10 p.m., Ida arrived. "I'm taking Tommy to my sister's house. You can't do this worrying about him." After they left, Vera gathered her evidence in a leather satchel. At 11 p.m., Ida returned. "There's smoke coming from my kitchen. Not a real fire, just enough to get attention. In 10 minutes, someone will notice. That's your window." Vera moved through alleys to the depot. She found the key hidden under a loose brick and let herself inside. The old telegraph equipment sat covered in dust. She wiped down the key and tested it. The line crackled to life. She began sending to the Prohibition Bureau field office in Omaha, 150 miles east. She identified herself, described the operation, listed names and dates. Outside, she heard shouts. Someone had noticed Ida's fire. Footsteps ran past toward the boarding house. Vera kept sending. She was nearly finished when she heard a vehicle pull up. Car doors. Men's voices. She had perhaps 60 seconds. She completed the primary message, then switched to a backup frequency, an old military channel her husband had taught her about during the war. She encoded a second message using his signal core cipher. Everything compressed into 3 lines. The depot door crashed open. Sheriff Cole entered, followed by Marcus Webb and 2 of Judge Bradford's men. "Step away from the Telegraph," the sheriff said. Vera kept sending. 5 more seconds. 3. Done. She lifted her hands. "You're under arrest," Cole said, uncertain. "Trespassing." Marcus Webb moved forward. "What did you send?" "A full report to the Prohibition Bureau. Names, dates, evidence." "They've had it for 15 minutes. Webb's face went white. "Shut down that telegraph." One of Bradford's men began disconnecting wires. "Doesn't matter," Vera said, voice steady despite her hammering heart. The transmission went through. "Federal agents will be here by morning. No one will believe a hysterical widow," Webb said. "You have no proof." "I have copies of every telegram you sent. Photographs of your operation. Witness statements. All documented." The sheriff looked between them, calculating. Federal authority was different from local power. If agents were en route, cooperation might be his only path to leniency. "Marcus, maybe we should." "Shut up." Webb's composure cracked. "She's bluffing." Vera realized Webb intended to kill her. Make it look like an accident. By the time federal agents arrived, she would be dead and evidence would have disappeared. "There's a second message," she said quickly. "Encoded in military cipher. Different frequency. The Prohibition Bureau will have it decoded by midnight." It was a gamble. Webb might not know enough about telegraphs to call her bluff. "You're lying," Webb said, but doubt flickered. "Test me. Wait until midnight. If federal agents don't arrive, you can do whatever you want. But if I'm telling the truth, you'll spend 10 years in Leavenworth." The standoff held. 15 seconds. 20. Then they heard it, vehicles approaching at high speed. Headlights swept across the windows. 3 cars pulled up. Men in suits emerged with credentials and weapons. Federal Prohibition agents from Omaha. Marcus Webb ran. He made it 20 feet before agents tackled him. Sheriff Cole raised his hands. "I want to cooperate. I'll tell you everything." The trial took place that summer in Lincoln. Judge Cornelius Bradford, Marcus Webb, Sheriff Cole, and 17 others were charged with conspiracy to violate the National Prohibition Act. Bradford received 12 years in federal prison. Webb got 15. Cole received 5 years in exchange for testimony. The trial made national news briefly. "Widow breaks bootlegging ring" read one headline. Reporters descended on Millbrook for a week. But the attention faded. By autumn, Millbrook had returned to obscurity. Vera Hartley continued working as a telegraph operator. Western Union promoted her to regional supervisor overseeing offices in 7 counties. The position came with a salary increase and respect from an industry that rarely granted either to women. She never remarried. The events of March 1927 had taught her something about self-reliance. She had faced down corrupt men with only her wits and courage. Marriage was optional. Strength was not. Tommy grew up to become a radio engineer for NBC in New York. He always credited his mother with teaching him Morse code, but also something less tangible, the importance of doing what was right even when it was terrifying. Ida Chen's restaurant thrived. She lived to be 93, died peacefully, and was mourned by 3 generations who had eaten her pot roast and received her quiet counsel. The telegraph office in Millbrook closed in 1955, made obsolete by telephone and radio. By then, Vera had retired to Lincoln, where she kept a telegraph key on her desk as a memento. Visitors would occasionally ask about the bootlegging case. She would tell the story matter-of-factly, without dramatics. "Someone had to," she would say. "It happened to be me." The story of Vera Hartley occupies a footnote in Prohibition-era history. It was not the largest bust, nor the most violent, nor the most politically significant. It was simply one woman in one small town who noticed something wrong and refused to look away. What makes it remarkable is its ordinariness. Vera was not a crusading journalist or federal agent. She had no special training. She was a widow trying to support her son in a town where power was concentrated in the hands of men who considered themselves above the law. She succeeded through careful observation, methodical documentation, and the kind of courage that manifests not in dramatic gestures but in the daily decision to keep moving forward despite fear. The telegraph, that antiquated technology, was both the instrument of criminal coordination and the tool of their exposure. Messages sent through the air in patterns of electricity, decoded by someone who paid attention. There's a lesson there about information and power. But perhaps the deeper truth is simpler: someone has to be watching. Someone has to care enough to act. In March 1927, in Millbrook, Nebraska, that someone was Vera Hartley. She was 28 years old, earned $42 a week, and changed history by refusing to ignore a suspicious telegram that arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a quiet Saturday night. That's where courage begins, in noticing. Everything else follows from that first decision to see what others prefer to ignore. Vera Hartley saw. And in seeing, she acted. And in acting, she reminded us that ordinary people can choose to be extraordinary when circumstances demand it.